Hi there, my name's Alex. I'm with Rainbow Ridge Reptiles, and today we're going to be building a little mini terrarium. I'm going to be showing you all the steps from start to finish and kind of going over the details of how to have a self-sustaining ecosystem and how to kind of maintain that. We'll get started here. This is the container that we're going to be building out today. It's a little cube. It's perfect to go on your desk or nightstand, not too big. Really good for beginners to kind of get started in this craft. The very first step is kind of making sure that everything is sealed up. You don't want any moisture to be leaking from the tank. So before we started this video, I did a water test, and basically what that looks like is you're gonna fill water kind of up to this line here and let it kind of sit in there for an hour or two, and just make sure that you don't have any leakage through the bottom seals here. That's really important to check. You kind of want to do that first right away before putting your build together. It's a little bit frustrating to put an entire build together and then find that it's leaking. So that's definitely the very first step that you should do. After that, you want to make sure that the terrarium is clean. They're usually coming from like warehouses that could be dirty, or different like dust or debris that's kind of around. You don't want that to be in the terrarium. And once something is in the terrarium, it's really difficult to get it out. So we're gonna use some clean paper towels here. And this is 71% alcohol, diluted down with a little bit of water. So we're gonna go ahead and give that a nice good spray. And then clean everything really well. You also want to be able to see the beautiful plants, so making sure that there's no hard water stains or like any fingerprints that might distract you from being able to see the beautiful terrarium that you build. So just making sure that we get all this type of dust and debris out. You just want to make sure that we're starting with a really good clean surface. So once we've ensured that everything is clean, we're gonna start putting together the first few layers. The first layer is gonna be a water reservoir, and this is gonna be a place where any of the excess water has a place to kind of sit outside of the roots where the plants are planted. We have a few different options when it comes to what we can use for the water reservoir. We have this leca pebble. This is a porous clay pebble that will retain a lot of moisture, so that water reservoir will stay fuller for a little bit longer. We also have these different rock options that you can use. They're definitely gonna be a bit more decorative. They're not gonna have that beneficial porous texture that the clay leca balls do. For today, we're gonna go ahead and use this leca here, and we're gonna build a little layer. We're working with a little surface here, so we don't want to take up too much of the space. That way we still have room for the soil. And this leca was rinsed. We get it in big bags and then kind of break it down and rinse it and kind of sanitize it. There's a lot of dust, and that will kind of make the bottom layer like really mucky. And so we make sure that we rinse all that stuff off before putting it into our terrariums. And then the next layer is going to be a felt pad, which is this guy right here. This is going to act as a barrier that kind of goes in between the water reservoir and then the substrate layer that we have the plants in. We kind of get this cut to size. You want it to be a little bit bigger than the enclosure. That way it kind of like makes a lip. I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about here. Let me get my scissors. So we're gonna go ahead and trace the enclosure here. And then we'll set this guy here to the side. And this felt material is pretty thick, so you'll want to use some craft scissors or fabric scissors to kind of cut through this material here. This stuff is great, really durable. I've taken apart tanks that are like 3, 4, 5 years old, and this stuff is still intact. It hasn't broken down. And take it out, rinse it off, and reuse it. It's really good stuff. So sometimes it's a little bit tricky to cut this guy to perfect size. So sometimes it takes a few goes. So see here, we kind of have a little bit of excess. That's a little bit too much. It's gonna kind of block the view here. So we're gonna cut him down just a little bit more. You see how that kind of just fits a little bit better in there, really snug up against the edge of the glass. We want it to be snug up, that way it's really creating a barrier here and kind of prevents any excess debris falling down. So now that we kind of got this guy in place, make sure all the edges are down. So that's layer number 2. And then we're gonna go ahead and do layer number 3 here, which is gonna be our substrate. Actually, we're gonna do a little bit of spag moss first. This is sphagnum moss. We get it in dehydrated bricks and then rehydrate it. It's really high quality sphagnum moss. And we're just gonna do a little layer here along all of the edges. This just kind of makes another layer that will be preventing any debris from falling down. Perfect, now we have all the edges kind of covered here, making another barrier. Now we'll go ahead and do a layer of our substrate. It's really important to make sure that your substrate is damp before putting it into your terrarium. The reason why, if you use dry substrate, it can actually leach some moisture out of the roots, which can cause some stress to the plants. And so we just want to make sure that the substrate has a good level of moisture before putting any plants in. So we'll go ahead and use this pump. We use RO water, which is really important here, especially here in Arizona. The tap water is full of harsh chemicals that can also cause stress to these plants. And so we use filtered RO water in all of our terrariums. Give that a nice good spray. And then just kind of mix it up. In this substrate, we have a few different ingredients. We have our sphagnum moss, we have activated charcoal, which is super important, adding a decent amount of carbon into our terrarium. That's going to act as a good filter to kind of help filter out any toxins from decaying plant material. We also have some really fine orchid bark in here. We have cocoa coir, tree fern fiber, really, really good stuff that will help your plants root and stay healthy. We also add some organic worm castings, which will slowly release over time to help fertilize your plants. It's a really good, fluffy, airy blend. You want to make sure that these tropical plants are getting oxygen to their roots, and so you don't want to use something that's going to be too compacted. You want it to be super flowy. You don't necessarily need too much substrate here. We've only done about like a 1/2 inch. Depending on the kind of terrarium that you're making or like the shape of the terrarium, you can definitely do things where it's a little bit higher up in one corner, just to kind of give some different dimension with your design. We'll go ahead and leave that for today. I think it looks nice. After you have these 3 layers put together, it's really up to you on what it looks like. There's no right or wrong way to really put the design together. Here we have lots of different options for decoration. We have mosses, and little pebbles. We even have some fun crystals and rocks and leaf litter. We have bark pieces and cholla wood. We have different pieces and shapes of driftwood, and these look really cool once mosses and plant vines and roots kind of take over. We have some preserved moss that's not really real. It's a dyed preserved moss, but still looks really fun in terrariums. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and get to the creative part of building a terrarium. This part includes putting all the pebbles and the rock together. And like I said before, really there's no wrong way of doing it. It's really just what comes naturally to you. I typically like to start with my wood pieces just to kind of get an idea of like what the structure will kind of look like. It kind of shows me some gaps where some plants could be. So I think I really like this guy here. It kind of just fell right in. I try not to be crazy perfectionist mode when I'm building these. I find that you just kind of want things to happen naturally. Just kind of want to go with the flow and just kind of not force anything. You don't want to overcrowd or overfill things. So we just kind of go a little simple at first. I think we'll maybe do some of these pebbles here in this little groove that we built with the wood. And then a really important step that we should probably add before we put any of our plants in is going to be our springtail culture. The springtails are these little tiny, like almost microscopic, they're really hard to see. But this is kind of what helps make the tank bioactive. Their job is to go through and eat any of the decaying material. It also helps aerate the soil and provide fertilizer to the plants. They also help kind of maintain some of the mold that happens. This is a charcoal base that they're living in currently, which is also in the substrate. So adding a little bit more carbon is definitely not going to cause any problems. The plants will actually like it. It'll make this ecosystem very, very happy. All right, next up is my favorite part, is putting some of these plants in. We have a Scindapsus exotica here. This guy's been growing in my greenhouse for, I don't know, like 2 or 3 months now. It was just a little baby node. Now he's put off this beautiful leaf. He's about to open up another leaf here. We're gonna go ahead and take most of this substrate off. This way that's been sitting in here for quite a while, and we've already added the perfect amount in here. It's also really important to make sure that maybe there's any pests in here that we maybe need to wash away, just to make sure that we're not putting anything harmful into our ecosystem here. All right, so getting this substrate off here can be a little bit tricky. I'm just kind of grabbing here at the base of the plant, applying a little bit of pressure, not too much, and just slowly working the soil out here. Look at these beautiful white healthy roots. This plant is so happy. Definitely ready to go into his forever home. Break away all of this extra stuff here. As you see, there's some perlite in the substrate that he was currently in. This can be a little bit harmful to the bioactive enclosure. It's also distracting to the eye, being that it's something white that kind of stands out. So we just want to remove that the best that we can. I brought over some RO water. We're just going to kind of slightly rinse the roots off. Just kind of inspect everything. This guy's super healthy, but there's been times where I've gone to clean the plant beforehand and there's maybe some rot or some like pests or issues, and you definitely want to quarantine those plants just to make sure that they're really healthy, removing any of the rotted roots, maybe using a pesticide if needed. You can even spray them down with alcohol and just kind of quarantine them to make sure that things are really clean before putting it into the terrarium. We're gonna go ahead and set this guy down here to the side really quick, and I'm gonna clean a few of these plants here, and then we'll be able to get the planting process started. So now that we have all of our plants clean, we are ready to start planting them. So let's go ahead and start with this nerve plant here. We have quite a bit to work with, so we might not use all of him in this build just so we can kind of utilize the space that we have. I think we have three separate pieces here that we can use. This plant is really cool. It has these trichome like hairs here that it uses to grab moisture from the air. I think we're gonna go ahead and use this piece here. I really like the way that it's shaped. We're gonna go ahead and tuck him in this back corner, I think. So we'll go ahead and make a little bit of a space for him. Make sure that the roots are fully submerged down into the substrate. And then just tuck him in. Really, there's not much more to it. It's kind of like gardening, if you've ever like put your garden together with the little flower plugs, how they just like plop out of the trays, take a little space and plop it in, kind of cover the dirt back up over it. It's okay if the leaves get a little dirty. We're gonna go ahead and spray everything down at the end there. I think it looks pretty freaking cool. So the next step is adding our isopod culture. This is what's gonna make it bioactive and really fun to admire and look at. It's our little roly-poly bugs. This is our zebras. They're so cool. They go through and eat decaying material through the terrarium. So as plants lose leaves, that'll drop down into the terrarium, and their job is to kind of go through and eat that material. Their waste will then provide fertilizer to the plants, kind of a natural process that we see out in the world, how decaying material breaks down. We're trying to replicate that and have like a little piece of nature enclosed in this container, and these bugs will definitely help with that process. So in this culture, we just have our substrate and some sphagnum moss and our decaying material. This culture has been put together for probably about a month now. So there's probably little babies all through here. So we don't want to necessarily waste or lose any of that. So we're gonna add the whole culture into the tank here. There are lots of different species of isopods. We have about 52 different cultures at home. You can check out our website to see all the different options that we have. We have some that get really big. We have some crazy exotic ones that have different colors and spots and different formations and horns and shapes, and it's all kind of crazy. These will stay relatively small, which is nice for a smaller enclosure like this. You wouldn't want to put like dairy cows in here. They will get too big, and if there's not enough material for them to eat, they will start eating your plants. We got a little tiny baby right here. He's so cute. See if I can get him on my finger. He is itty bitty teeny tiny. Hello, little man. So cool. All right, welcome to your new home. And off he goes. Like I said, we kind of work in layers, so I know we're covering up the rock. We'll go back over and add some more. No big deal. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to add the isopod culture when you add the springtails. The reason I don't do that is because it kind of takes away from being able to build without necessarily hurting them in the process. So I typically will add them once I'm completely finished. Now that we're done with the isopods, we're gonna go ahead and just kind of give everything a nice little spray down. We have our RO sprayer here. Make sure that it's turned to the misting setting. Just kind of give everything a nice little spray down to kind of settle everything down into the substrate. We have our water reservoir down here, and we don't necessarily want the water reservoir to be completely full of water. It's beneficial to have a little bit of water down here. So we'll go ahead and kind of fill it up about halfway. We just want to make sure that there's a separation between the water line and the felt pad that we have here. That way it's not fully saturated and the plant roots have a chance to kind of escape the wetness. It can take some time to fill up the little water reservoir down at the bottom. I recommend concentrating the stream of water along the edge. Kind of turn the tank here so you can see how it's kind of slowly seeping down into the water reservoir, soaking the felt pad that we've created. Now you can see the water slowly trickling down into the leca layer. If you find that there is too much water down at the bottom, I recommend siphoning the water out with a tube. You'll want to get a pair of tweezers and pull up the corner here. That way you can access the water reservoir down below. You'll stick your tube down, create some suction to siphon the excess water out. If you're really careful, that shouldn't necessarily happen. It should kind of balance itself out to where you don't have too much excess water down at the bottom. It's really gonna be up to you in making sure that you're not overspraying or over misting your tanks. We definitely gave it a nice good spray down initially to kind of soak and settle everything in. Daily maintenance for something like this, you can just give like a little spray down. It doesn't necessarily need to be a soaking process like we did before. It's just going to be a nice little spray, kind of concentrate it in the areas that you have the moss. Your moss should stay a nice bright vivid green color. If the moss starts to turn white, it's not getting enough moisture or light and it's dying. So you kind of want to keep an eye on proper color when it comes to the mosses and other plants as well. You want to make sure that leaves aren't yellowing or starting to mold or kind of get rotten. If there's too much moisture down in the bottom and then there's not enough like water seeping through into the water reservoir, you can create a lot of rot and like issues with the plants. So we're just trying to eliminate that. So you just want to make sure that you're not overwatering when doing so. All right, I think that we are pretty close to done here. We'll go ahead and close the lid. We have a really fancy lid that we had 3D printed. This isn't the lid that came with the tank per se, but it kind of adds more of a viewing space up top, which is nice. And then there's also built-in ventilation that's really important with these enclosures, that you're able to still ventilate and get access to oxygen. You'll latch things like that. The lid's on secure. Isopods can't escape. And there we go. Now you have a beautiful miniature ecosystem that you can have on your desk or anywhere really that you want to enjoy.
Okay, we are recording.
Perfect.
I'm not this short in real life.
Maybe I should find a shorter stool.
You're good.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're good. I just am the Snapple lady.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
Nope. Alex, thank you so much for showing us how to build a terrarium. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course. I'm so glad that you were able to come down today and build that with me. We were able to really put together something beautiful, and I'm glad that I was able to teach and facilitate that today. It was really special.
Yeah, I agree. So what are some of the benefits of building a terrarium? Mental health benefits, physical benefits? What are some of the things that you have found within yourself and other people that has benefited them from building one?
Yeah, I think that it allows you to take care of plants in a different way. A lot of these plants can really struggle, especially here in Arizona with the dry weather that we experience during the summer. So building a little mini rainforest in an enclosure like so really allows you to take care of these plants in a different way. You're able to kind of learn how they grow and the patterns that they grow in and what they necessarily need to thrive. And a lot of these plants will put off different colors and flowers, and we won't necessarily see that without building a specific ecosystem for them to live in.
And especially here in Phoenix, in the desert, we have biodiversity, but it doesn't come in the form of what you would get in a terrarium. So it's a lot of fun to bring basically a mini rainforest into your home.
Yeah, I think it's so neat. It's really, really special to have like a little part of the jungle right there on your table.
Yeah, definitely. We can grow plants that would not survive outside.
Exactly.
Unless you're building a dry terrarium, right? Which is a terrarium with cactuses and a different substrate. Then that is something that could mimic the natural Arizona biome a little more. Is that right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we're definitely trying to mimic something more like tropical when building more of the wet terrariums. But yes, you can definitely build more of a drier type build with succulents that will not necessarily need to have a top. It can be a little bit more exposed. Yeah, there's lots of different options when it comes to the terrariums that you can build.
Definitely. One of the things that I really enjoyed and that I learned a lot of is how you can learn a lot about soil just from a tiny terrarium like this, because you get to see everything happen, right? We talked about soil on this channel, about plants and how they add organic matter and the different critters that use their essentially poo, which becomes fertilizer for the soil. Yeah. But rather than get your hands in the soil and to see all of that on a larger scale, you can see everything on a smaller scale in a terrarium. So it's a great way to learn about soil and to see how isopods and different, depending on how you make it bioactive, different plants, how they interact with each other. You can watch the substrate change. So I think it's a really fun way to learn how to garden and at the same time learn about the diversity of different climates, all within a little mini contained ecosystem.
Yep, that's exactly what we're trying to do here. So you hit it right on the nail. I also find that it's definitely beneficial, like mentally. I find that it's a very healthy and good hobby to kind of be in. There's lots of different things out there that aren't necessarily the healthiest, and I find that this is like a craft that you can continue doing and just kind of get more and more pleasure as you go.
I agree. Planting definitely helps to relieve stress in a lot of people.
Scientifically proven.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Alex, this has been so much fun. Please tell everybody where you can build these terrariums and where they can find you.
Yeah, so we have a little pop-up shop here in Tempe at Sea of Green. It's a hydroponic plant shop. We have a little pop-up here in the back. You come on through the greenhouse and we have a beautiful station set up. You have lots of different glass container options that you can select from. And as you saw in our building video, you have all the supplies that you need, lots of different plant options. We have lots of beautiful examples of larger scale terrariums as well throughout the shop. We have lots of different supplies, wood options. We have all of our substrates and sphagnum mosses and the leca all pre-bagged. So if you're trying to build something larger at home, you can take all of our supplies home and do so at home.
Hey, it's Future Sorrel here. I wanted to show you the 2 terrariums that I built with Alex at Rainbow Ridge Reptiles in Sea of Green. I figure there's no better way to show you another beautifully finished and thriving terrarium than to show you the 2 that I made with him. And all of these little plants and bits and components came from Rainbow Ridge Reptiles and Sea of Green. So the first one is my dry terrarium. And this one, as you can see, has an open top because it doesn't need to be kept sealed. It doesn't need humidity. This is meant to mimic the desert ecosystem. So there's a lot of different things in here. There's some rocks, there's some moss, and I know that there are things in here that are not normally found in the desert, including, if you can already see, this preserved alligator head. But it came out so cool. Look at this. Isn't that awesome? I have 2 little cacti or succulents growing in there. Here's one, and the other is growing out of the cacti's or the alligator's mouth. Now, this wet terrarium is the first terrarium that I built with Alex, and this one stays sealed because it needs the humidity. At the time, he didn't have the really cool 3D printed covers, so I have this cover and some plastic wrap. But let's take a look inside. There's so many different plants in here, and I do have isopods. I absolutely love it. You can see the roots forming down into the substrate. What a beautiful way to watch an ecosystem at work. I absolutely love this. And that's what's great about terrariums. You can learn so much about plants, about soil ecosystems and gardening, all within a small little container. If you want to know how plant roots are affected by water, look at a terrarium. The more water that you give some plants, you'll see the better root systems that will grow and how they'll spread out. You will watch how different bugs contribute to that ecosystem. You can watch the life cycle of plants. You can watch how plants get affected as water evaporates. There's so many different things that you can learn about plants, about soil, just by having yourself a little terrarium, preferably a wet terrarium. Dry terrariums, not so much. Those are absolutely amazing, but the biggest thing that you can learn about soil from those is watching how moisture affects your soil substrate. So definitely something important to remember, and the differences between wet and dry terrariums. But absolutely loved it, and I just wanted to chime in with that. I'm really glad that you guys liked this video. Please check out Alex at Rainbow Ridge Reptiles and the store that he's in, Sea of Green. I love them both. What an amazing opportunity we have in the Phoenix area to have them with us. So thanks again, everybody. And as always, you know what to do. Save the soil.